Yo, what's going on guys, it's Cynical and welcome back to another video. Today for you guys, I wanted to bring you dudes a Kingdom Hearts discussion video talking about something that I think Square Enix just desperately need to work on in regards to the Kingdom Hearts franchise. This has been an apparent problem since the very beginning of the series, all the way back in 2002. And the reason why I wanted to reiterate this, because we have actually talked about this exact topic in the past before, is due to the way that the finale of Kingdom Hearts Union Cross was handled for the global side of things. Not so much the Japanese audience, but more so us living off the shore of Japan. So we're talking about the whole simultaneous worldwide release thing. I think it's insane to think that in the year 2021, a franchise as big as Kingdom Hearts is currently, still to this day, not receiving simultaneous worldwide releases. And it's insane. If we think about a franchise like Final Fantasy, for the first time in Final Fantasy's history, for Final Fantasy 15, back in 2016, it finally received a worldwide release. Now, better late than never, as they always say, but again, for a franchise as big as something like Final Fantasy, you would have expected a simultaneous worldwide release to have happened many years prior to that. But it's good to know that these days, currently, Final Fantasy games do release simultaneously all around the world. But we are still in a situation where Kingdom Hearts, while yes, Square Enix over the years have been closing the gap between the Japanese release and the localized worldwide release, it is still an apparent problem. And even when looking back at Kingdom Hearts 3 that released in 2019, although there was only a 4-day difference between the Japanese release to the worldwide release, that in itself is still enough time for some pretty hefty spoiler content to come out. It essentially meant that the majority of us, basically the majority of the fan base, as Kingdom Hearts is now on a worldwide scale and the fan base is larger than ever, had to buckle down, use spoiler hashtags, make sure that they're not going onto certain areas of Twitter or YouTube to ensure that they wouldn't end up ruining an experience that they had waited an extremely long time for. Don't mind me, dude. Just making my way through Spoiler Town, making sure I don't get showered with content I don't want to see! I mean, it literally do be like that for something like the Kingdom Hearts franchise, considering that even though, again, Square Enix have been closing the gap, because Kingdom Hearts is such a story-heavy franchise, and that for the most part, a lot of the community are invested in Kingdom Hearts, not just for its pretty top-notch gameplay, but also its really in-depth, interesting, long-running story since the very beginning. It's important that for us we don't get spoiled for a game that we've been waiting so damn long for. So going back to it, let's talk about the recent Union Cross shenanigans that ended up happening. Now, it was announced at the start of this year that the very final of Union Cross would be happening. It was announced later on that the finale of which would be split into 2 parts. As it's always gone, Japan have always received updates for Union Cross and Unchained Key first, and then maybe about a month or so later, the global version will receive those. This is the way that it's always worked, but over the course of time leading up to the finale, the gap for these updates from the Japanese to global version have been improving a little bit. Not overly, but a little bit. Part 2 of the finale for Union Cross ended up releasing in Japan on May 31st. And Part 2 of the finale for global ended up releasing not too long ago on June 10th. Now, that's a decent amount of time, about 11 days difference. The issue in hand, not just looking at that gap, but more so the communication from Square Enix was absolutely abysmal. What happened was, the update ended up dropping for global, meaning that you could update Union Cross several hours before Square Enix had even posted any sort of announcement over on the socials. It sort of gave the community a slight indicator that maybe perhaps Square Enix really aren't as onto it in the global sense as it seems. While yes, it's apparent that over the years, Tetsuya Nomura has given us many messages, and Square Enix have given us many messages saying we now realize that Kingdom Hearts is on this worldwide scale. We have fans in every corner of the world. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. When you see stuff like this, where an update, a pretty damn important update, that being said, was released and updated into the game, and then several hours later, the announcement of which to say, hey guys, it's out, didn't happen, I think that's pretty shocking in my opinion. Now, what I wanted to do was talk about the release cycle of Kingdom Hearts from the very first game all the way through until Melody of Memory. Because this gives us a pretty clear indicator that yes, for one, Square Enix have improved with closing that gap. And with the recent release of Melody of Memory, it is the shortest gap between a Japanese release to a worldwide release. This would probably indicate that for the next Kingdom Hearts game, hopefully next year, there won't be a gap at all. Hopefully the next Kingdom Hearts game we get will be the very first in its history to be a simultaneous worldwide release. I thought this information was actually quite interesting as well. I don't know if you guys have ever gone through and looked at the different releases of the Kingdom Hearts games and compared when they release in one country to another country. So let's look at that. Kingdom Hearts 1 ended up releasing in Japan on the 28th of March 2002. It released in the US on the 17th of September later on that year, the 15th of November in the EU later on that year, and the 26th of December in AU later on that year. Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories was the next Kingdom Hearts game to release after number 1, releasing in Japan on the 11th of November 2004, then releasing on the 7th of December in North America 2004. Not too bad of a gap, considering if we look at the initial Kingdom Hearts, 28th of March in Japan, then the 17th of September in the US, about a 6-month difference right there, so pretty cool to see that for Chain of Memories, only the second Kingdom Hearts game to ever release. Kingdom Hearts 2 ended up releasing on the 22nd of December 2005 in Japan. It wasn't until March 28th, 2006 that the game ended up releasing in the US, so yeah, about a 4-month difference between the Japanese to US version. But then what's interesting about this is the AU and EU didn't end up receiving Kingdom Hearts 2 until about another 6 months later from even the US version, releasing in the AU on the 28th of September 2006 and the EU on the 29th of September. You'll notice as we go through this information that the swap arounds from prioritizing one country receiving it first to another, obviously Japan always gets it first, but in the sense of the other regions, EU, NA, and AU, they kind of switch around a little bit, which is really interesting. Although looking at, of course, EU, you've got to kind of think about like the other countries within the EU that speak other languages. For the most part, a lot of them do speak English, and looking at the AU for Australia and New Zealand, we speak English. It's just really interesting how localization works. Chain of Memories was the next Kingdom Hearts game to then release after number 2. It released in Japan on the 29th of March 2007, and get this, this here is pretty wild. Chain of Memories didn't end up releasing in the US until the 2nd of December 2008, over a year later. Keeping in mind that Chain of Memories was packaged in with Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. Obviously the Final Mixes didn't end up coming off the shore of Japan to us around the world until the HD remixes dropped, but insane to think. And what's even crazier is Chain of Memories was only ever released in Japan and the United States. Kingdom Hearts 358/2 Days ended up releasing in Japan on the 30th of May 2009. In North America on the 29th of September of that year, in the EU on the 9th of October that year, and in the AU on the 22nd of October. Still, even at this point in 2009, the gap is still pretty bad. Though keeping in mind, around the PlayStation 2 era, especially for a lot of Japanese games, this was just kind of the way it worked, and it's not really until these Japanese franchises increase in popularity until they finally start to receive simultaneous worldwide releases. It does again take me back to Final Fantasy just took so long, but there still is to this day a lot of Japanese franchises that do have that popularity behind them, looking at Western audiences that still don't receive simultaneous worldwide releases. Birth by Sleep ended up releasing in Japan on the 9th of January 2010. This is a pretty shocking gap because North America didn't end up receiving it until the 7th of September. In fact, that's the worst so far. And then the EU and AU ended up receiving it on the same day, which was nice to see. They didn't have separate ones on the 10th of September, so not too much of a gap between EU, AU to that of North America, but a pretty shocking gap for the Western audiences compared to Japan at this point. This is almost 10 years after Kingdom Hearts had started. I think by this point it would be fairly obvious that there is at least some kind of Western interest in the franchise. The gap gets a bit smaller here though with Recoded, which was nice to see. In Japan it ended up releasing on the 7th of October 2010 and then ended up releasing in North America on January 11th 2011, about 3 months, so not too bad. For AU it then ended up releasing on January 13th and then EU January 14th. Strange that for the prior release, Birth by Sleep, and crazy to think too that Japan ended up receiving Birth by Sleep and Recoded in the same year. This is something that I actually didn't know, but they got 2 Kingdom Hearts games that year. But crazy to see that EU AU received Birth by Sleep on the same day, and then looking at Recoded, it's a day apart again. Just strange. Dream Drop Distance ended up releasing in Japan on the 29th of March 2012. The EU ended up receiving Dream Drop Distance on the 20th of July 2012, AU on the 26th of July, and NA on the 31st of July. Really interesting to see that the EU ended up receiving Dream Drop Distance first out of North America and the AU. So about a 4-month gap. Still, Recoded was better, but this is where we're starting to see improvement. Until we hit 1.5 HD Remix. This was a little bit strange to see, and it was clear that Square was still kind of stuck in their old ways. But don't worry, there's improvement after this little speed bump. So yeah, 1.5 released in Japan on the 14th of March 2013, and then it wasn't until September that the rest of the world received it. A big gap for sure, even though this is only a remaster, of which it's not like we had to necessarily dodge any spoiler-based material. Still, dude, come on. NA received it on the 10th of September, AU received it on the 12th of September, and EU received it on the 13th of September. Kingdom Hearts 2.5 HD Remix, the mark of the shortest gap so far in this timeline between the Japanese to the worldwide release. So in Japan, 2.5 ended up releasing on the 2nd of October 2014. In North America, it released on the 2nd of December, AU on the 4th of December, and EU on the 5th of December. Now, Unchained Key Union Cross kind of went back a little bit, which was kind of unfortunate to see, but this happens a lot with mobile games, so it's not too big of a problem. What is a problem is at the other end of Union Cross's life cycle. It would have been nice, especially with the community outcry, to receive this finale, especially with what it contains for the future of the series, at the very same time, but that didn't happen. Union Cross Unchained Key ended up releasing in Japan on the 3rd of September 2015. It wasn't until the 7th of April 2016 that North America received it, and just over a month later, on the 16th of June, that the EU and AU received it. Again, not too much of a big deal at the beginning of Unchained Key's Union Cross's life cycle, but more important at the other end. Kingdom Hearts 2.8 HD Final Chapter Prologue. Finally, some hope for the simultaneous worldwide release thing. Still not happening, still hasn't happened, but at least shows us that Square Enix is starting to pay attention to Western audiences, and would mark the very first time that we've had a worldwide release for a Kingdom Hearts game, minus Japan. Japan is still receiving the goods early, as they always do. So 2.8 ended up releasing in Japan on the 12th of January 2017, and worldwide, meaning EU, AU, and North America, on the 24th of January. Only 12 days difference. Wasn't too bad, still plenty of time to be spoiled, considering the fact that 2.8 included some new stuff with keyback cover and 0.2 Birth by Sleep. 1.5 plus 2.5 HD Remix for PlayStation 4, released in Japan on the 9th of March 2017, in North America the 28th of March, and in the EU AU on the 31st of March. A bigger gap compared to 2.8, but this isn't really too much of a problem. It is a remaster of a remaster, so not too much of a problem. Kingdom Hearts 3. Okay, so here's where we're really starting to see even more improvement. This was gorgeous to see, but still a very big pain in the ass, as I was saying. 4 days difference is still plenty of time to be spoiled hard, dude. Releasing in Japan on the 25th of January 2019 and worldwide on the 29th. But then here's when we look at Melody of Memory, releasing in Japan on the 11th of November 2020 and worldwide on the 13th of November. So far, Melody of Memory is the Kingdom Hearts game that has the shortest gap between the Japanese to worldwide release. Only 2 days difference. That's pretty good, it's an improvement, but as I was saying at the start of the video, it is wild, beyond belief, to think that a franchise like Kingdom Hearts, still to this day, is not receiving a simultaneous worldwide release. But I have so much hope and faith that for the next Kingdom Hearts game, we will. As evidence shows though, over the course of Kingdom Hearts releases throughout the years, Square Enix are improving. In the comment section down below, guys, I would love to know your thoughts and opinions towards this. I think this is the one thing that Square need to work on because of what Kingdom Hearts is, so story heavy. And I know the rest of the community would be happy knowing that collectively all of us fans around the world, even including Japan, are playing these new Kingdom Hearts releases at the exact same time. However guys, I'm Cynical, hopefully you're having a fantastic day, and until next time guys, I'll catch you later. Peace.